Hello and welcome to episode 2 of Flat Out. After a thrilling Guineas weekend, we could say, slightly dampened by the weather, we'd have to admit, plenty of rain on the Saturday and a rather attritional renewal of the 2000 Guineas that I'm sure we'll get into. Tom, you enjoy it?
Yeah, I loved it. I thought it was a cracking weekend of action. 3 days of really some thrilling stuff, some close finishes. I particularly loved the 1000 Guineas. I thought that was one of the best races I've seen for quite a long time on the flat, actually. That was a proper, as they say in America, stretch duel between Morge and Tahira. And I actually said to the guys immediately after the race who I live with, one of whom was Jack, if you'd said to me before the race that Tahira would finish 10 lengths ahead of the field and still get beaten, I wouldn't have believed you. So I think that says a lot about the performance of Morge.
Certainly incredible, wasn't it? Certainly incredible. Jack, yourself, good weekend?
Yeah, very much so. I was pleased to get Chaldean or Chaldean, however you pronounce it, in. It was a little disappointing Friday. It wasn't the best racing, was it? And all the rain that came, it was a bit disappointing that the water had it. And for me, it spoiled it a little bit. But in terms of the two classics, there were really good renewals. I think obviously the right winner won the 2000. I thought Tahira probably had every chance to go and win the 1000. It was a little disappointing for me that she didn't go past. Morge probably had the benefit, obviously, running off the plane. She only arrived in England 2 weeks ago. Godolphin have the benefit of doing that, and maybe that and the combination of a world-class ride from Oisin Murphy was the difference. But for me, it was a little disappointing. Tahira couldn't go past. Did she want to go past? I'm not sure. But it'll be interesting to see. They'll probably reoppose in the Irish Guineas, and I don't know. Maybe with that under her belt, I'd consider going in a game with Tahira, but I don't know. I'm not sure.
There's one thing I would note, being there on Sunday, is that Tahira did have a little bit of a winter coat still. Which is interesting because Dermot Weld seemed seriously confident, didn't he? It was, by his standards, quite an aggressive move to bring her over to England because we thought for all the world she'd stay in Ireland. But yeah, she came when she came. She clearly was going well at home, but she did have a little bit of a winter coat. Morge, however, looked fantastic, and the other one that did look absolutely unbelievable was Meditate, funnily enough. So, but clearly, probably the ground just where it's still a bit too soft for her. Probably still the jury's out whether she really wants a mile on the course like the Rolly Mile, like a really attritional test of stamina as it can get over a mile there. Out of interest, Jack, do you think the watering actually made that much of a difference? I mean, he claimed that he was watering to maintain good to firm.
I just don't think there was any need, really. The time suggested it wasn't that quick Friday, and obviously it just completely ruined Saturday's action. Obviously, the draw-bys that came on Saturday, we thought Twilight Cause was on the right side. Turned out it was on the wrong side, on the back of that. And for me, I just... there seems to be this fetish from the clocks to water and over water. I read a stat today. I think there's only been 9 meetings run on good or with firm and description since the Lincoln turf meetings. And what's the problem with running on good or good to firm, safe ground? And I think this feeling to always water is, I don't agree with it. If it's safe ground, let's just run as it is, Yeah,
it's a problem, I think, to some degree. I mean, Sir Mark Prescott, you'll always hear him quoted when you're talking about when he started, about over 60% of all races in Britain would be run on good to firm or firmer, essentially. And so you'd be looking for a specific type of horse to begin with, shorter pasterns, ones that aren't a little bit more sturdy, that aren't going to break. Whereas now, with the way we've bred the horses, the horse population has changed. The general horse wants a little bit more juice in the ground, and they tend to, have more problems going on, faster going. And so we're kind of in a bit of a catch-22 now. Whereas even if you wanted to change it, you probably can't. It doesn't really suit the horses we have now. But no, I do see the point. In terms of the weekend, it was, obviously the going changing. We're with us kind of recording on a Thursday night. It didn't really suit us, tipping from where we were, but we still managed to land a couple of winners in Chaldean, as you mentioned, Jack, and then Pro, Tom. I mean, you must have been thrilled to get one over the line in the first episode of the podcast.
Yeah, no, it was a great start, wasn't it? Yeah, I mean, obviously in these 21 runner handicaps, you've got to have a bit of luck on your side, and I did, luckily. And I remember saying beforehand that it was all kind of down to the ride that Kieran O'Neill was going to give the horse, and I thought he gave an absolute cracker. And we said, didn't we, that he'd have to deliver the horse as late as possible. Okay, he delivered it with 100 yards to go, but that was still a lot later than he delivered it before when he got done by Orazio in the line. So, yeah, a cracking result for him, and also for Jenny Candlish. I mean, she's done a great job with this horse. He's clearly a really progressive sprinter. Now he's got that win under his belt. Yes, he'll go up in the weights, but these big sprint handicaps, he has got a perfect profile for them later down the line in the season. It helps to have horses who are upwardly mobile like he is, progressive like he is, and probably still a little bit ahead of the handicapper even after a weights rise, because I think he's the type who's going to be quite hard to get a handle on because he only just does enough and he has to be a little bit late. And I like that kind of horse, particularly in sprints, and he loves a strong pace. So I think the future's pretty bright for Probe in these top field handicaps this season. So yeah, great start for the podcast, and great start for Probe as well.
Certainly true. Jack, anything that you really want to reflect on over the weekend, other than obviously aside from the Guineas, which we've already touched on?
Yeah, so just to touch on Probe, obviously I stopped short of backing him last week, but I teed up Tom nicely, and I was really impressed with that performance. And as he mentioned there, he's one for these handicaps going forward, and I actually think the Wokingham would be the ideal race for him. The way he has to be weighted with and delivered as late as possible, that absolutely suits Ascot. He's went up to a mark of 97 this morning on the revised ratings, and obviously I still think he's got a bit of wiggle room there. He's always probably going to be under bet, trained by Jenny Candlish, which is an angle going forward as well, and I just think he's a thoroughly likeable horse.
No, he certainly is. He certainly is, and he doing us a favour. He's popular in my book anyway. Yes, going forward, other than that, Twilight Calls, yeah, we were a little bit disappointed, weren't we? In general, you thought we were on the right side this year, and it turned out not to be so again. He did make a fair bit of ground, but I think the horse he was vying for favouritism with, Manican, ran a cracker, didn't he? I think we all agree on that.
Yeah, very much so. Obviously under a penalty, Manican, he was drawn, I think, in one. He's ended up coming forward and finishing in third, and that was a tremendous effort. And obviously he's won twice at Ascot, and he's very much one. I think you'd be taken out of that race going forward. I believe Connections are going to go straight there, and I think, well, it was obvious that he was probably the real eye catcher of the meeting. So yeah, Manican very much one to track going forward.
Yeah, in terms of impressive winners, I mean, Running Lion was seriously impressive, I thought. Tom, on Sunday, that was just, I mean, visually, I mean, I think maybe you thought Mutasabek on the Friday was equally impressive. I mean, two very, very nice winners. Whether they got it a little bit easy, I mean, Mutasabek, I think maybe got a fair easy lead, but travelled beautifully, didn't he?
Yeah, he certainly did. I think headgear's made a massive difference to him. I love the way he travelled, as you say, and he's put to bed some really decent horses in behind. I thought that was the performance of the meeting for me. I know he got that easy lead, but there's every opportunity for him to capitulate, and he just kept on rolling, and if anything, extended his lead. And I think he's a big player in those Group 1 mile contests further down the line this season. Running Lion, I have to say, I wasn't particularly keen on her coming into the race, because she was a horse who had already done plenty of winning this season and had been out a fair bit. And at Kempton last time, I wasn't particularly massively impressed with it. But I think she's really found a burst of improvement to win that Pretty Polly in the style that she did. A race that has often thrown up some pretty good winners that go on to do very decent things later on. And I think if you're taking that at face value, that form, which you're more than entitled to do, I mean, there were plenty in behind who are having either their first or second run of the season, might not be quite tuned up to it, but they usually would be for a listed race. Most trainers aren't going to leave their fillies short for a race like that. And Running Lion made mincemeat of them. I think she's a really smart prospect, and I'm perfectly willing to hold my hands up and say I didn't think she was that good. And how good could she be? We yet to see, because that was something.
The time figure was pretty impressive by all accounts. Went through the race and fired in some pretty interesting fractions. Roaring Lion as well. It's nice to see Roaring Lion get a few decent horses in it. I mean, I loved that horse. I thought he was fantastic. It's such a shame that we lost him so early, because I think he probably would have turned into a really nice stallion. Well, as in it, stating the bleeding obvious, isn't it? But it's starting to look like he's having some really promising progeny. So, yeah, that's basically our review from the weekend. Unless anyone else has anything else they'd like to add.
Just to probably touch on the 2000 Guineas a bit more. Obviously, the incident a bit early on with Royal Scotsman and Little Big Bear, Joey. Touching on Royal Scotsman there, obviously such a remarkable effort really for pulling so hard and finishing third. I see you shaking the head there, Tom. I don't think he would have beaten Chaldean. Maybe you think differently. But,
of course you don't.
It certainly cost Little Big Bear. Well, it did him no favours. He pulled too hard himself, and obviously with so many horses not running their race, the ground probably contributed to that. But one thing it does, it means the Commonwealth Cup shapes up to be a proper race with all those sprinters we mentioned last week going back for that. But Royal Scotsman, Tom, he could go for the jersey. He'd probably win that. I'd admit that. But surely connections are going to go to the St. James's Palace. What do you think?
Oh, that's very big of you, Jack, to admit that he might win the Jersey Stakes. No, I'm starting to feel like he might be that kind of horse that is just, it's so difficult to win with him because he's got so much talent. But he was very keen on Saturday, and obviously he had that little coming together with Little Big Bear as well, which didn't help his cause. And I thought he ran
certainly didn't help Little Big Bear's cause.
No, certainly didn't help Little Big Bear's cause. No, I thought he ran an absolute screamer. To be perfectly honest with that, I thought it was a massive run from Royal Scotsman. He was basically the only one on the near side to make any kind of inroads whatsoever, and he got pretty close. And at one point, I have to say, I thought he was going to win coming to the 2-pole because he was making ground so quickly. And then I think his effort just petered out a bit. Those early exertions must have paid their price at the end of the race. And I know that Ollie Cole was absolutely gutted afterwards. Properly difficult to console. So I think they obviously expected a massive run and thought, race could have planned out differently. He might have got a bit closer. I think the race itself definitely played into the hands of a horse like Chaldean, and I think he very much deserved the win, and it was a really good performance, and he's a very likeable horse, isn't he? He's so resolute and so tough and very straightforward as well. So, all plaudits to him. And when you get to reach the bottom of him, who knows how good he could be because he just keeps on finding more. I think, personally, Royal Scotsman is a faster horse than Chaldean, and he's maybe a little bit more precocious, slightly more talented at shorter distances, but possibly over a mile if they reoppose. I think Chaldean may just have his measure again getting that first run because I just could see Royal Scotsman travelling up super well and then maybe something going wrong because... I don't know. He seems the kind of horse that might keep happening to. But fingers crossed he lands a big one, Royal Scotsman, and over a mile because he definitely deserves to. I think.
Just to me, he looks like a horse. I mean, we're just looking at here the little incident. I mean, we look how keen he is just in the pink and green colours there, the Fitchy Hay colours. He's just. I think he may have really have benefited from a run. This horse, as in, I think he'll definitely improve a lot. He'll settle down. Just had the edge taken off him. I mean. He's a difficult horseman to train. I mean, they haven't had a winner for 200 days. I think Yakoulef was their first winner in a long, long time. It's very difficult to get a horse ready for the Guineas, isn't it? After such a long time, kind of on the cold list, essentially. But it was a bit of a. I think it's hard to say it wasn't a bit of a non-event, the Guineas, 2000 Guineas, because I mean there were so many that clearly just didn't run their races for whatever reason. And Chaldean was the one who did, and all credit to him, even though you're kind of taking credit away on you. But you have to admit that plenty of them didn't really get into it at all. The one who I thought ran an absolute cracker on the sly was Noble Style. Because, I mean, you're coming into it, a furlong out, you're thinking, Jesus Christ, he's going to get involved. I mean, I thought he was the least likely stayer of all of those ones that we thought were Commonwealth Cup horses. But he ran an absolute belter. So yeah, he's one to definitely be excited for. But what do you think with Little Big Bear? I mean, I'd probably be tempted to have another go over the mile with him though.
I think Noble Style, Sakia, and Little Big Bear, they'll all go for the Commonwealth Cup now. James Doyle said as much in his post-race interview. He said he was always trying to go a bit quicker than he wanted to, and the fact he ran a race like that, as you mentioned, it was a tremendous effort. James actually said in the interview as well that the reason why he probably ended up on him was his work had been awful, to be honest. So I think he might just be a horse that only performs on the track. I'd gone a little bit cold on the Commonwealth because Appleby, the vibes were bad going into the race, and I'd be a bit stronger on him now going back to Ascot. That was a huge effort. yeah, I'll hold my hands up with Royal Scotsman. It was a top effort, and probably the race for him this season might be the Prix Pratt over 7, the Group 1.
Yeah.
I think that just makes complete sense for connections. Obviously, they'll probably go for Ascot, as I said, but as well as you mentioned, Ollie Cole hadn't had a winner until Yekau left. The same about Dermot Weld. He hadn't had a winner until was it Mashaya on the day before the 1,000 guineas on Saturday. So again, you could probably mark up Tahira in that same respect.
Yeah. But there we go. I think that was a decent review of the weekend's action. Right, so Chester this week, lads. Is it one of your favourite meetings of the year, Tom, or is it where does it rank for you?
I really like watching it. I think punting is almost impossible on it because you need to be so favoured by the draw and where you are positioned. But I do love watching it, and I always like the classic trials at the track, because even though you're unlikely to see a future Derby winner or an Oaks winner, because they don't usually run at Chester, I always like it when Aidan O'Brien brings over his kind of second or third string to run the race, just to see where he stands against the opposition. I always think that's quite funny. But it's really good handicaps, always really competitive, and the sprint races particularly are always a great watch because they go hell for leather, don't they? And I suppose if you're a trainer and you've got a horse, particularly in races like the Lily Agnes, who are drawn 10, 11, 12, you just might as well go home. I mean, unless you kind of fly the gates, you got no chance.
The old hasn't eaten up excuse coming out quite quickly. You know?
Exactly.
Yourself, Jack, is it somewhere that you're fond of?
No, not really, not at all. Chester's been a bit of a bogey track for me. One thing I would say is it gets to this time of year with Chester and York that most horses start to have had a run or two, and I think this is starting from now where the form does start to take shape, and going forward from here, certainly I think is when it really starts going in the flat season.
And on that note, let's get into it. I think all of us, in terms of the first day, the Wednesday, we're not really keen on anything, are we? It's there are a load of tricky small field races, and I think we're going to just go with where we have stronger opinions. And I think both of you actually have an interest in the 130 on Thursday, lads, the CAA Stella Handicap for 4-year-olds, 0 to 105. Tom, would you like to kick us off with what you fancy?
Yeah, sure. And I know it's probably a kind of cliche, the old adage, really, that at Chester, it does help to have a horse who knows the track well, has got good record, particularly in sprint races, because usually they're going to run their race because it's such a specialist track. And Lookout Louis is exactly one of those. He's had 4 starts at Chester, one of which his first one came in maiden company, and you can probably overlook that, but 3 starts since then have resulted in victory. He won this race last year. He was a stone lower in the weights, which shows you how much he's improved since then. He's got a couple more wins, one at Chester, one at Haydock as well. And since then, he's been tried in a Group 3, and then on return, he was tried in a listed race at Lingfield and quite clearly needed the run, but I thought ran really well. He wasn't beaten too far, and Lingfield's not necessarily a track that's going to suit him unless he can get an easy lead because he's got so much early pace. And Chester has always been the perfect setup for him because he's got so much gate speed. He can get that early lead. He can get most of the horses in behind off the bridle from an early stage. And the race is won by the home turn. At least that's the way it has been in the past. The only issue for him is that he's up in the weights, but at the same time, he's a much better horse than he was last year. And you can see that on the ratings and what he's done since then. So I think he's a very, very solid horse. And I can see him going really, really close.
Yeah, with a friend of, what horse we've been talking about so far on the pod in Manican behind him last time at Chester.
Exactly, yeah. And that form's worked out fine, hasn't it?
It's worked out fine indeed. Jack, same race, taking him on head on.
Yeah, going head to head again this week. 1-0 at the minute to me, hopefully 2-0. I'm going to take him on with Nymphadora. She was second at this meeting last year behind Living the Dream, who obviously finished ahead of Manican last time in the Palace House. I'm hoping from stall 3 she can just sit and stalk, get a nice prominent position. Lookout Louis is obviously, he won this last year. He loves the track. My angle here to get him beat is I think he's just been struggling since going up to a career high mark. He's come down a little bit to 99, but I think this the handicapper might just have him in his grip now. And I think Nymphadora, she probably just needed her run first time up at Bath there the other day, and I think she'll be spot on for this. She's got some solid back form, second in the Holyrood House at Royal Ascot last year. And I think she offers a bit of value at 6-1. And she's probably the one I'm going to kick off this meeting with anyway.
No, it makes perfect sense to me. That's a sound case you made. In terms of, before we move on to the Chester Cup and the Friday, any thoughts on Save the Last Dance, Jack? Is that a horse you're fond of? Arrest? I mean, these two, I mean, obviously not exactly betting contests for us, but I mean, surely they're going to give us some clues for later down the line, really. And what are you expecting?
Yeah, absolutely. Shaping up to be fascinating contests. I can't see either of them getting beat, but as you say, they're not really any betting proposition. Save the Last Dance, she's been really impressive the last day. She probably had the run of the race, but she created a really good impression there. The second and third, Boogie Woogie and Azazat, have both come out and won since, so the form stacks up. This looks a really winnable race, and she's been well supported in recent the last fortnight, and she's really hardened at the top of the Oaks betting, and I can see her consolidating her place in the top of the market there. Arrest hasn't been seen since second in the Criterium de Saint-Cloud. Hopefully that pronunciation was okay there, Tom. Adelaide River was third behind him that day. It's hard to see him reversing form there, and again, I think this just looks an ideal opportunity for Arrest to kick off his campaign. And on the way the bookies react to these type of trials, I could see him being single-figure prices come the end of Wednesday.
Certainly, Tom. I mean, yeah. What do you think of that pronunciation? First off,
very well done,
man. The classics man, aren't you? I mean, if anyone's going to literally teach us any of those kind of Latin languages, I'm sure you're the man, aren't you?
That was beautiful from Jack. Yeah, it's much better than the pre-Gene Pratt that he said earlier on.
Yeah. In terms of, and anything to add on those two horses, Arrest, Save the Last Dance?
Yeah, I think Arrest is interesting for the season. I mean, Thady Gosden went on Luck on Sunday at the beginning of the campaign and said, asked him what's the classic horse that you want to keep in mind for the season, and he said Arrest. So I think you've got to take that on board. So he's a horse that I'd be interested in going forward, and obviously Jubmont have made a pretty nice start to the year with Chaldean.
So moving on to the Friday, gents. I mean, interest in the Chester Cup, Tom?
I mean, look, it's always a really good race, and those towards the top of the weights have got good chances. I feel like Rodzinski's going to benefit from Harry Davis's £3 claim. It's going to help. Isra declared for the Ormond, probably to run. At the time of recording, we haven't got the decks for this race. One horse that I've been keen on following throughout the season is a horse called Duty of Care for Jamie Osborne. He's around about the 40-1 shot for the Chester Cup, and this might not be his cup of tea, but at the same stage, I think he's completely, very much within the realms of ahead of the handicap off a mark of 93. What I've seen so far over the winter, or at least over the recent months at Kempton, has really impressed me with this horse, and I think he's a stair going places. So if he does take his chance, then I'd be keen on Duty of Care. I mean, it might not be the right scenario for this horse. I think he could probably do with a stronger pace at a more galloping track. But if he does run, I think it's worth keeping an eye on him, and 40-1 around about that price is quite big.
No, that's fair. That's a fair old price, if he does run in this race. Jack, anything for yourself?
Yeah, just want to start by saying it's hard to know, as Tom alluded to there, without the stall positions. Obviously, if you get a higher draw, it's game over. But one that would take most interest at the moment is Metier. I'm probably looking at it through rose-tinted glasses. With the Wise Eagle form last time out, he was in receipt of £4 that day. Wise Eagle found out this morning he's gone up to a mark of 107. And to be fair, Metier was coming with a challenge on probably ground that was quicker than ideal. I believe this has been the plan since. The question mark over the trip. Obviously, he's had a hurdle campaign. He's won 4 times, but obviously a bit of flat speed. But going around a bend, it should be fine. And any rain, the wetter the better for him. And he makes most appeal at the moment. Just looking at his price here, there's a bit of blue about him there. 10s. If he's decked up, yeah, definitely he's the one for me.
No, I can see that too. I mean, I do like him a lot myself. I mean, we are looking at probably pretty soft ground, are we not? I mean, it looked like there was a fair amount of rain throughout tomorrow that we're expecting, which is going to turn conditions quite testing, isn't it? I would say. And so you really are looking for soft ground horses, and Metier is just the classic example. It can't be soft enough, can it? Moving on then towards the weekend, and we head off to Ascot, don't we? Victoria Cup. I mean, it's one of my favourite kind of the flat handicaps. Actually, it's always a fun one to get stuck into. Jack, do you have a particular fancy?
Yeah, so I'm actually really strong on one here. This would be the big one for me so far this year, and that's Baradar. I actually tweeted about him the other day. Basically, as soon as he crossed the line in the link, and I thought, there's your Victoria Cup winner. He strikes me so much of River Nymph, who disappointed in the Lincoln, and then he went and won the Victoria Cup after. And when you get these real specialist 7 furlong horses, and with the conditions, I mean, there's upwards of 40 mils of rain this week, and the wetter the better for Baradar as well. And I think when George Boyer opened up his phone this week and saw the forecast, he was rubbing his hands. And providing he doesn't get a unbelievable draw bias, I'd be very strong on Baradar. He opened up this morning. He's been very strong already. I think he can still get 10s. He might be a bit of 9-1 now. And I've already got stuck into him. And after Dex, I'd say he's probably come in shorter again. And he's a confirmed runner, and very, very strong on Baradar here for me.
And Tommy, would you be in agreement with Baradar?
I think he's got a good chance for sure. Yeah, it's a proper flat fan, isn't it, to say a sentence like, as soon as I watched the Lincoln and saw Baradar across the line, I thought Victoria Cup. I mean, that is just a flat fan all over, isn't it, really? So, yeah, I mean, whenever Jack has to be fair to him, whenever Jack has a really, really strong fancy, which he does have a few times every year, it's very much worth paying attention to, because I think generally his record is very, very good. I would put one up as well. It's not the most genius of picks, but it's last year's winner, Vafortino. And the only reason I'm putting him up really is because I went to Kevin Philippa's week and a half ago and to do a program for This Racing Life on Racing TV. And he was very confident and very hopeful that Vafortino could repeat the feat of last year. He thinks he's improved, and he's had a couple of runs this season. I thought that run at Newmarket was brilliant last time behind Rebel Territory. He wouldn't have been fully tuned up for that, and I thought it was a fantastic prep effort. He is £6 higher than he was winning the race last year. Now he's won on good to soft ground. The soft ground would be a slight worry if it got really deep, and not that I'm saying he won't handle it, but he's kind of unproven on it. So we're yet to see whether that would actually properly suit him, and obviously it would suit the likes of Baradar, although we actually know if he's got soft ground form. But yeah, Vafortino I think is very solid, up £6 from last year. Race really suits him. And horses who have run the Victoria Cup or won the Victoria Cup and then run the race, following years usually have done pretty well. So I'd be keen on him running a big race again. And I think 12-14-1 is absolutely fair about a horse who's been there and done it and isn't too much higher in the handicap and is very, very much fancied by his trainer again.
Yeah, I remember him last year. He was a kind of a racing TV office punt, wasn't he? I think Vafortino. I remember the office going up, Neberson with it hanging out the door before going in to review it. I think punch in the air. Yeah, it was a good day that last year. But yeah, that pretty much wraps us up for this episode of Flat Out. With all the racing throughout the week, and not the busiest of Saturdays racing. I think this will be our episode for the week. We'll be back next week to reflect essentially on all the things we've seen, all the classic trials, the classic clues, Lingfield from the weekend as well. Let's not forget that. Again, not often the biggest punting card, but we will, I'm sure, learn plenty from it going forward. And yes, keep an eye out for episodes going forward. Stable tours we're going to be doing. We're hopefully going to be bringing on a few of those to get everyone really excited about the ramping up of the flat season. So yes, we will look forward to seeing you here again soon.
If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to Racing TV's YouTube channel, and you can also follow the lads on Twitter. Our accounts are linked there in the description. Thanks for watching.